Question number 3 in the name of Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan.
Thank you. My question is in relation to the criteria used for the reopening of embassies, the opening of new embassies, the costs involved, and in particular in relation to the embassy in Iran.
Thank you, Deputy.
Calcórla, Ireland's diplomatic and consular network is at the forefront of efforts to promote our political and economic interests and our values in providing important services to the Irish people and business community. At present, Ireland's diplomatic network includes 56 embassies, 7 multilateral missions and 10 consulates general and other offices. This network will be further expanded as the new missions approved by the Government in January are set up in the course of this year. The configuration of the State's diplomatic and consular network is kept under ongoing review by the Government. A range of factors are taken into account in considering our diplomatic representation overseas, including our national, political, economic and trade priorities, as well as the availability of resources. This question is also being considered in the context of the review of Ireland's foreign policy and external relations, currently being undertaken by my department. I can confirm that consideration was given to reopening the embassy in Tehran as part of the current expansion of our mission network. However, as I noted during my recent appearance before the Oireachtas Committee on Foreign Affairs and Trade to discuss my department's revised estimates for 2014, the current resource constraints do not allow us to have resident representation in all the locations that might objectively justify it, having regard to political, economic and trade factors. The Government is, of course, conscious of the political, economic and trade factors that might warrant the opening of resident diplomatic missions in Iran and several other countries. We are conscious also that the change of government in Iran and the subsequent interim agreement on the nuclear issue holds out some promise for a general improvement in Iran's international relations. The recent visit of a delegation to Tehran by the Oireachtas Committee on Foreign Affairs and Trade, in which the Deputy took part, was a recognition and encouragement of that trend. As you are probably aware from your recent visit, my department appointed an Honorary Consul of Ireland in Tehran in June 2012. Honorary Consuls currently receive an honorarium of €1,125 per annum and are allowed to retain half of the consular fees they collect for the services they provide, such as visa or passport applications and the authentication of documents. The costs of providing an honorary consular service are obviously considerably less than operating a resident diplomatic mission. However, honorary consular representation is of a fundamentally different nature to diplomatic representation, and I do not consider it to be a substitute for a resident diplomatic presence.
Thank you. Deputy O'Sullivan, 1 minute. Thank you.
Well, I suppose one of the questions is that in relation to the review of our foreign policy, would it not have been more logical to have waited for the review and then out of the review to have decided which embassies would reopen and where the new embassies would be? And I'm delighted that the one to the Vatican has been reopened, but it seems to be that the criteria was it's part of the fight against global hunger and poverty. Which is wonderful, but is this part of the strategy now in terms of embassies? And as you mentioned that we were there recently, and Deputy Crowe and Berner are in the chamber also, and at any of the meetings there, the delegation, particularly the government TDs, were regretful about the embassy having closed. It was said that it was purely on economic reasons, and the impression was certainly given that it was only a matter of time before it would reopen, and then we're only back a week, and we have the list of what was reopened and what new embassies were opened, and no mention of Iran. So I just thought the timing was very bad on that one.
Well, I've consistently stated both here and indeed to the Oireachtas Committee that the issue of what, first of all, we have a very small footprint compared to other countries in terms of our representation abroad. And I've expressed the view that I wish to see that expanded. But also, I think because we have a small footprint, we're also going to have to change it on a continuing basis as our needs change and demands change. The decision you asked me why, we couldn't wait until after the review on foreign policy. Well, we've a number of reviews underway. One of the reviews, for example, which has been completed, is the review on trade, tourism and investment. And it's quite clear in that review that we do need to have a greater presence, particularly in Southeast Asia, for example, where we're underrepresented, South America. We need to, in Africa, for example, we're arising from our Africa strategy, and also, indeed, in the United States. So that informs that. The timing, rotation of diplomatic missions occurs in the summer. So therefore, you need to have decisions made early in the year. If we didn't do that in the early part of this year, you're then talking about nothing being implemented until the early part of 2015. And I think for a variety of reasons, the trade imperative in a number of countries, the review of the Millennium Development Goals, which is underway and to which you referred, it is necessary to move with those change in missions now.
Thank you. Deputy O'Sullivan?
Yeah, okay. My last point is there are concerns among the NGOs about the human rights issue and the balance between human rights issues and promoting our trade and our economic interests. And you did mention there in your reply about it being to do with upholding our values. So I'm just asking, and there was absolutely no difficulty. We were on a trade mission to Iran. There was no difficulty discussing human rights issues, whether it was the death penalty or conditions in prisons and for prisoners, that has to be part of any delegation that goes, not in an intrusive, lecturing or hectoring sort of way, but that it is on the agenda, that we continue to fulfil our commitments on human rights.
Thank you.
This country has, I think, a very, very strong record and a reputation internationally for the promotion of human rights, and we're going to continue that. And I see the promotion of human rights as very much something that operates in tandem with our trade work. Indeed, if you look at the trade missions, the trade agreements that are signed by the European Union, they have a human rights dimension to them. So the promotion of human rights and our work on the Human Rights Council is something that we give huge attention to. On the specific issue of Iran, which is the subject of your question, yes, Iran is very much on our radar. As I said, the review of missions and where we have missions is something that we will keep under continuing review. Iran is one of the locations which we did consider as part of this review, and which will obviously be considered in future reviews.